what would you do if you
suddenly awoke in a dark, dilapidated kitchen with no idea how you got there? A stranger on the floor awakes as you scan the room frantically. What happened? Where are you? You can't move, and your hands are tied. You're helpless. The stranger approaches you looking for a way out, and as he searches for aid, he spots a knife. He begins cutting you loose, but you see something. What was that? You can't make out exactly what you just saw, but noises are coming from the other side of the room. You're not alone. The stranger continues desperately to try and cut you free, but stops. He hears it too. You can just make out something in the distance, and then you watch as a dark figure fast approaches you. But you're speechless, frozen in fear, unable to get a word out. The woman attacks the stranger. Your heart is now beating out of your chest, sweat dripping from every pore. You can't get away. Your mind is racing, and then
nothing? This is a pretty horrifying scenario. Not one that anyone in their right mind would ever want to experience, right? So it begs the question as to why this demo for Resident Evil titled Kitchen was ever even created. Who would want to experience this? Who would want to subject themselves to such horror? Well, it turns out that based on decades of wildly successful horror franchises in film, television, and games, a lot of people. And with games placing you as up close and personal to the horror as possible, I wanted to explore exactly why anyone would want to experience this. Why do we play horror games? Well, there isn't really a definitive answer, but with plenty of studies and research having been done on the effects horror has on an individual, there's a few theories we can explore that might help explain why horror games are so enjoyable and why we look forward to absolutely terrifying ourselves. In 2013, Assistant Professor Nicole Martins and PhD student Teresa Lynch of Indiana University performed a study on 269 college students titled Nothing to Fear, an analysis of college students' fear experiences with video games. She relied on methods for the study previously used for non-interactive media to see if the interactive nature of games heightened the experience. What she found was that in games, there were a lot more anxious feelings, but an enjoyment of that fear. With 44.1% of the subjects reporting they enjoyed the fear experienced within horror games. So where exactly does this enjoyment come from? A good place to start analyzing this would be to look at one of the first emotions we all experience when seeing or thinking about something that scares us: fear. Fear is a foundational emotion within humans that correlates directly with several instinctual reactions, and horror games know this so well. When playing a horror game, your struggle to survive is surrounded by moments of tension, anticipation, and dread around every corner. The game is designed to overwhelm you with these sensations of fear, and it's not just for spooky atmosphere. Horror games are tapping into the chemical makeup of your brain. Specifically, the part of our brains that deliver emotional responses, called the amygdala. When feeling afraid or threatened, our amygdalas activate what's called our fight or flight response. Stress hormones are released and large doses of adrenaline are pumped into our bodies, preparing us to either fight or run away. It essentially kicks us into gear, and this sensation, whether you're actively aware of it or not, is what keeps us excited to experience scary events. Have you ever noticed that when you or someone you know experiences something that truly frightens them, the immediate outward response is usually laughter? Some believe this response is us taking immediate action to deal with what we just experienced and overcome the fear it placed within us. Physician Dr. Alex Lickerman wrote in Psychology Today about this very process and the use of mature defense mechanisms. Being able to laugh at a trauma at the moment it occurs or soon after signals both to ourselves and others that we believe in our ability to endure it. And after a while, many of us who begin to enjoy playing through horror experiences become more and more sensitized to this feeling of danger. We've overcome something that we were once fearful of. And over time, you begin seeking out that next moment of true fright. This might sound crazy to some people, but it comes down to the pure stimulation this provides the player. It's sort of intoxicating. Horror games make you feel alive. We know we're not in any real danger, and we're safe to tackle these challenges, ultimately leaving us ready to conquer the world, even if it be from a tiny dose of a video game. This challenge we seek out is what drives horror's success across all mediums. In games, you're placed directly in vulnerable situations with limited resources, constantly tapping into your primal emotions of fear and everything that comes with confronting your fears head on. There's usually little time to think, so a lot of your decision making stems from pure instinct. This feeling of adrenaline, quick thinking, and instinctive reactions isn't new to games, but horror titles do distinguish themselves because we are actively involving ourselves in something we find frightening and choosing to overcome that fear. And that brings us to our next section of why we love horror games: curiosity and mystery. The core foundation of any good horror story has some level of mystery. Whether it be the monster you never quite see, the looming anticipation of that next tense moment, or a scenario that leaves you guessing where things are headed, horror stories use mystery to lure you in. And what makes this even more enticing is that horror is one of the most creative genres of storytelling due to the fact that it's constantly trying to push the envelope. The characters, creatures, and scenarios need to create something that you've never seen before in hopes that it's a truly scary experience. Because of this, horror games have created some of the most unique and creative settings and characters within media, with art design that is truly out of this world. It allows horror games to constantly keep the narrative at arm's reach, drip-feeding you clues, and maintaining an alluring mystery that you must slowly uncover. The sense of surprise keeps us on our toes, rarely dragging due to the intense, high-stakes nature of awaiting that next moment that will get your heart racing. We're curious creatures, and horror games tap into that curiosity in such a unique way, but most importantly, horror games give us full control over the pace of the story. If you're not ready to see what's behind that door, you can wait. You can run past moments of tension or try to avoid them altogether. The experience is in your hands. And one of the best examples of a game that executed all these concepts of mystery, fight or flight, and creativity to as close to perfection as possible is PT. Becoming an instant sensation, PT created one of the most intriguing horror games we've ever seen and has already gone down in history as one of the most influential pieces of horror content in gaming. The very release of PT played right into this sense of mystery that horror narratives are so well known for. During the 2014 Gamescom conference, a trailer for a brand new horror experience was teased. Odd snippets of gameplay were shown with cryptic voiceover, being careful not to give away too much. And as the trailer came to an end, no big gameplay hook or narrative bomb was dropped. Instead, they just showed the reactions of the people who had played, and they were absolutely terrified. This pitch was enough for any horror fan to jump right in, but the mystery behind this horror experience only grew as you booted up the game for the first time.
Watch out. The gap in the door. It's a separate reality. The only me is me. Are you sure the only you is you?
This ambiguous opening quote comes with zero context, and you're immediately just dropped into the opening section of the game. You begin on the floor of an extremely dark room. Your only way forward is through the door. As you enter through, you find yourself in a modern hallway of what seems like a normal home. The atmosphere is dark, the graphics are photorealistic, and something is off. A radio broadcast detailing grisly murders plays over your exploration as the light overtop the entranceway sways and creaks. Things are tense, and every time you push the character further down this hallway, your body is being flooded with adrenaline. What's that sound behind me? When's something gonna jump out at me? How much more am I gonna see before I call this quits? But you push onwards and reach the end of the hallway to find another door. And as you enter, you end up exactly where you started. Both someone who steers far away from horror and someone who embraces it would surely agree that this intro into PT is undeniably a powerful force that preys on the desire to experience the unknown. Because you end up exploring this same hallway dozens and dozens of times in a seemingly endless loop. But each time, something changes. Sometimes something drastic, sometimes subtle. And this only fuels the need to discover more. A door, previously locked, finally opens. You find an unrecognizable creature in the sink. You discover writing on the walls. You repeat the hell of this hallway over and over, solving any puzzle you can just to escape, get out, see the end. And it's moments like this where horror games truly test you. Up to this point, the game has curated anxiety within you. It's built up this feeling within you over time that something is coming. You're anxious of the future looming threat. But this This is fear of what's in front of you right now. Do you put the controller down and walk away? Or do you face your fear and push forward? If you give in, the game's over. The mystery remains unsolved. This sense of alluring, mysterious, and powerful story needs to make an impact so you feel driven to get past moments like this and see it to the end. And that's exactly what PT had going for it. A grand mystery of people asking, what is this game? How do I finish it? Can I finish it? It turned out that this cryptic demo was nothing more than a playable teaser for a new game in the long-running series of Silent Hill. The internet and gaming community had a complete meltdown from the beginning to end of this entire experience. This was how you make a horror game. It brings together everything we love and long for in a horror experience. This was the genre at its finest. And while the industry still talks about PT years later, it's clear to see that well-crafted horror games can leave lasting impressions to the point that we've even created a subgenre of reaction video content that floods the internet anytime a new horror title releases. It's become a staple of horror titles, and the amount of players recording the reactions is staggering, and proves we not only enjoy experiencing horror, but also like seeing the effects it has on those around us. And luckily, horror games are in no short supply, with modern titles releasing frequently and scaring players every day. And while the AAA space is busy crafting high-budget fright fests, it's been the job of the indie community that has really allowed the horror genre to go to some truly incredible places. Many of the most frightening games have been born out of the independent developers looking to take all of these elements and push them further than they've ever gone. The freedom that the genre allows creatively and the demand for the next terrifying experience means that horror games will continue to innovate new types of scares and surely aren't going anywhere anytime soon. It's the thrill of the ride for which we all keep coming back for more. The sensation you experience while playing a horror game has a real effect on your mind and body, and it's truly exhilarating. A good horror experience boils down to one simple thing: stimulus. Because it's hard to deny that whether you genuinely enjoy the fright or shy away from it, horror triggers a stimulating feeling within you that is both strong and primal. We all connect to it, and it's just how you interpret the experience that makes the difference. We as horror fans are familiar with the feeling and look forward to finding that next big scare. But for anyone who thinks it's all too much for them, give it a shot. Attempt to face your fears within this controlled, safe environment, because you never know what answers are lurking in the dark.